Welcome to Jump Shots from the Goal Line. I am your host, Jonathan Dugan, joined as always by Mr. John Henningsen. John, we missed out last week because your boy was a little under the weather, but how you been, dude?
Good, man. I'm definitely bummed we didn't get to do a draft preview this year. So a
Yep.
little bit of sadness, but when you're sick, man, and when you're down bad, I totally understand. So it is what it is, but it sounds like we both have had a little bit of fun as well. So since we last
Yep.
talked, the Jump Shots from the Pod spring concert series has started. I know we've all been out there getting in our reviews and basically putting our money where our mouth is, because when we have these guests on, we've certainly hit the hard questions around music and tying it into whether it be SEC, Big 12 quarterbacks. So just want you to know those artists we're talking about out there, we're seeing them live. We're putting in the work. We're really doing it out there. So, I
Uh,
know we talked about it a little bit, but I mean, who got you sick? I mean, who do we have to blame in the spring tour?
well, just real quick, it is funny that you mention like that we don't just talk about these people because literally like two of the people. Well, both people that we saw have been mentioned on this podcast, both
Yeah.
to Chris and Brennan or Brendan. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I
Yeah,
got
Mr. Gall and Mr. Gordy both.
yeah, I
Yeah,
got the
like
fog right now.
yeah, you're good. Braden Gall.
But yeah, both of them have been mentioned on this podcast. Pima County Fair was out here in Tucson, and the People's Champ Paul Wall uh, just glorified our sweet city with his presence. And let me tell you, I was out there like swimwear, bro, like singing every lyric, sitting sideways, chunking up the deuce, all of it. And I knew every lyric. I had an incredible time. Um, Freaking Ying Yang Twins followed him. They were not as good. They were my second time seeing them. And Henny, I know you're going to probably go
Yeah.
in on a little bit of crap about that.
I
But
mean,
you know,
I
it's
think it's just. I mean, I think you said it for yourself. You've seen the Ying Yang Twins twice, and I'll let the people decide.
yeah, it's fine. Hey, to each their own. And I grew up in the era of crunk music, and they were on the forefront. All right, it was them and Lil Jon the East Side Boys. They were leading the charge. And let me tell you, I've never felt older in my life because back when I was like 13 years old, those guys were freaking all over MTV and BET, and now they are closer to a retirement home. So, and it wasn't any more apparent than when I saw them in concert. Good
Yeah.
Lord.
Shout out
Uh,
VH1.
Yeah, or VH1. Yeah, we can't forget the third
They
cousin
kind of
of.
play the classics still, right? Aren't they like behind or like playing older music always? Or am
I'm
I?
not going to lie to you. I have not watched VH1 probably in 15 years.
So we're just gonna
Since
say yes, they
since
do.
Flavor of
It's exactly
Love,
what they do.
they
They
lost
just.
me when they took that show off the air. So, R.I.P. And then who was the third act? It was an R&B guy. I don't know. I can't remember. I wasn't impressed. Neither was my wife. We were both just like, okay, this is not for us. But it was a hell of a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure I caught the vid or the flu or a hybrid freaking love child of the two. That's why we didn't have an episode last week. I was just laid up in bed feeling like hell. So again, we are sorry we didn't have the coveted NFL draft preview like we did last year. I had material ready to go, but it's okay. We're gonna cover the draft today. Henny, I know you went to a pretty sick concert though, one that I'm very jealous of. It is somebody that we both very much enjoy listening to, especially on the golf course. Who'd you go see?
Yeah. So I went and saw Tyler Childers.
Mm-hmm.
Childers. I
I think
still
it's
don't even really know
Childers,
how to say it.
right?
I think it's Childers too, but yeah, Tyler Childers, and so saw him, and dude, he's just every bit as good. And yeah, to your point, what's cool is we have like sort of had like a podcast relationship with them. Tyler doesn't know that, but like
Yeah.
some of our guests definitely and certainly do know that, and we've had that interaction going on social for quite some time. So it was definitely great to actually see him live.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Dude, if you're a fan of country music, just a great vocalist. The guy is awesome. I mean,
And tell a
absolutely
story,
worth it.
dude.
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience than probably what you had, but like different, but both can be great, right? So Tyler Childers rocked. I mean, he was just incredible. So no regrets
Something
there. Totally worth it.
something I learned that I didn't know, but your great fiance put on her Instagram. You guys have a Tyler Childers song as your wedding song. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be a Tyler Childers song. So I think at this point we're pretty much locked into it. So I think that's going to be the case.
I mean, that's pretty dope. I mean, it's cool. Number one, that you get to share a genre of music that I know you're very passionate about. You've been on Tyler Childers since the freaking beginning. You were the guy that introduced me to him, and your fiance shares that passion with you. I mean, that's freaking
Stole
dope.
it.
So
She basically just stole it. I mean, to be
yeah,
honest, she just like she knows more words than I do now. Because
yeah,
she's like practicing, right? So she's a Swiftie, so
mm-hmm.
she learned her discipline because like if you apparent at least this is allegedly what happens. If you go to a Taylor Swift concert, you don't know the words, everybody calls you a fraud and throws stuff at you. At least that's what I'm led to believe. So
Right.
she wasn't going to let that happen. So she was training for Tyler Childers. She now knows more than I do and is like
Wow.
absolutely addicted to all of the music. But it's a good problem to have. But it's also hilarious because she genuinely, I, I don't know. I'm just like not a person who learns every single lyric. I kind of just let the music wash over me, if you will, many a times.
Yeah.
And she's a studier. She's a
Yeah.
studier.
Yeah. She's getting her whole freaking BA in like country music now, which, hey, more power to her. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, it was a good
Um,
time, man.
no, I mean, hey, that's dope. I mean, the power of music is, you and I think our friendship certainly bonded over music even before this podcast started. That was one of the big things you and I always used to talk about. And even my wife and I, like, it's kind of funny that we both went with our spouses to music that we like and that we kind of like, share. Because even my wife, like, that was one of the first things that her and I bonded over was like old school hip hop, which that pains me to say old school now, but like, Crunk and like Paul Wall. And she couldn't believe a white boy from Yuma, Arizona was into like that kind of music. But that's something that her and I share. And now you and, your fiance, kind of the same thing. So it's definitely something cool to have in your back pocket. I think it's awesome you guys are going to concerts. That was for your birthday too. So, you know, again, happy, very belated birthday at this point. But what
Yeah,
what is what
awesome.
a
Yeah.
sick present.
No, it was awesome, and you're right. Like that is actually something that has connected us from the beginning. So it's always been sports, music, and then sometimes plants. So you guys probably don't want to hear
Sometimes.
about that part, but sometimes we mix that in too. So you want to write it in a question, you want to talk plants, we'll do it. We're
Yeah,
not afraid.
listen, baseball season is upon us, the doldrums of the off season, and we'll put a poll out there if you guys want to know about some sick desert plants or how grass grows. Henny's your man. Let me tell you, big grass aficionado. Or if you want to hear about how the Houston Astros are doing, we'll put a pot or a poll out there, and we'll see what the people want.
Astros are still cheating, probably.
Yeah, and I don't
Update,
think they use grass either,
officially
so
updated. Yeah.
I think they're turf guys. So I know that
Did look like
that
they have the roof open today, though. I think actually just because I follow along with Gordy, he posted that. So shout out
no,
to all our
well,
guys and our guests. I guess we're already chomping at the bit for college football season, but we do
yes, we
have the
are.
NFL draft. We do have the NBA playoffs. We actually have good stuff. So I am actually excited to talk sports today too.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, the NFL draft did happen. With me being sick, I watched every freaking minute of it because that's all I could do is watch TV. Watched all the pre-draft coverage, which I thought NFL draft or NFL channel or whatever it's called. They did a really good job. I typically watch them instead of ESPN because I like Daniel Jeremiah. Um, but it was good this year, and the draft was fun. It was rumored before the draft that it was going to be a crazy draft, lots of trades, what have you. Not so many player trades. I think we only had really the one with DeAndre Swift going to the Eagles, which we'll talk about. But some news did happen right before the draft that I know this podcast was very excited to put to bed. Lamar Jackson is staying a Raven for another 5 years. The man got paid. He is the richest man in the NFL, and did it all without an agent. So screw you, old white people. He did it. Thoughts, John?
Yeah, I'm just standing ovation for doing without an agent. I'm just so happy to tell everyone to shut the fuck up about that, to be honest.
Yep.
Like I
Yep.
love all of the like we talked about it on this podcast, and I know like it's easy to take the bait, but we talked about it in terms of hey, like realistically, the deal probably happens around this timeline. So
Yeah.
there's really no way to judge this whole, all these like little shifty reports about, well, if you had a traditional agent, blah, 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 right? I'm so glad we can put all that crap to bed and the man gets to
Yep.
keep his money. So
Yep.
I'm just really happy for Lamar. As I told you and have said on this podcast a million times, I just want to see him stay a Raven. A Raven. Like, there's no point in me exploring this elsewhere. So I'm happy for
No.
you. I'm happy for Lamar.
Thank God.
And then fine, good for the Ravens too. But I'm really just happy for Lamar because that's, as I've said a million times, I think he's a tremendous talent. I always thought he should be getting paid, and I love that he did it his way.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, hats off to him because this could have gotten really, really ugly. And I think for a moment there, it almost did with like the trade request, and then him just kind of going on Twitter a few times, refuting different reports and stuff. But I don't. Now that I look back at it, I don't know if that was really directed at the Ravens as much as the media. Um, from everything I've gathered post his extension, um, I think him and the Ravens had a pretty good relationship. It was just a matter of, hey, let's meet in the middle somewhere, and then that Jalen Hurts deal got done. So shout out to Howie Roseman, by the way, because um, if you're not a Ravens fan, you might not realize this, but he's hooked up the Ravens a couple times now. Back in 2018, the Ravens traded with the Eagles for the 32nd pick to draft Lamar Jackson. And then this year, the Jalen Hurts deal, which again, congrats to Jalen Hurts, awesome deal. They used that as the blueprint to get the Lamar Jackson deal done without it being fully guaranteed or anything like that. He simply got $5 million more in guarantees and $5 million more on his base. And that's all she wrote. So shout out to Howie Roseman, the best Ravens GM out there that's not a Ravens GM. We salute you, sir, and we thank you for everything. But I completely agree with you, Henny. Like, Lamar Jackson is the Ravens at this point. Like, he is the face of the franchise in every single aspect. And you know what? Like, he has a lot to be excited about. They went out, they got Odell Beckham. We'll go over the draft. They helped him out there, and they got him a new offensive coordinator as well. We can put this thing to bed. We can look forward to a new season. And it just kickstarted just a really cool draft weekend. I think there was a lot of excitement that was built off of that. And then the results happened, right? So Bryce Young obviously went number one, which there was a lot of chatter the last month about potentially CJ Stroud going one. Then there was even like a Reddit post that said that Will Levis was going to go one, which turned out to be just dreadfully wrong, which we'll jump into that as well later. But there was all over the place. But at the end of the day, I think anybody that watched college football could tell you, I think the guy that deserved to go number one went number one. Don't you agree?
100%. It would have been any other way if it was my pick. I can tell you that much for sure. Just in having what I mean, we saw we were plenty exposed to all of these guys. We've seen that was what was fun about the guys at the top from the quarterback position. I don't think there's really any of these guys, if you're watching college football, that you would have missed at any point, even to the tune of even the guys that the Chargers, like even guys that drafted at the end of the draft, like whether it be
Yeah,
Duggan or Stetson, like we've seen all of these guys. So
we've
to me,
covered him.
So Bryce Young was, and I can't remember, who the artist was that we compared him to. He could have been Childers. Like, I don't remember. But
Yeah, we'll have to go back and listen
yeah,
to the
we'll have to go
tape.
back. I'm like, I can't remember who we associated him with, but I always thought he was the number one pick. So no surprise there. Sure, he's a little bit smallish, and I understand that there's going to be some doubts around that, but smaller quarterbacks are learning to survive in this league. They're not all perfect, but they seem to be surviving at the same clip as the big guys and are every bit as productive.
Yep. So that wasn't surprising at all. And then obviously, CJ Stroud going number two, all that stuff. We'll jump into that. I actually have my winners and losers of the draft, and then obviously I have some surprises as well that surprised me at least. So let's just jump into that real quick because that'll help cover the whole draft. Some of my top drafts, number one, I think you got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. What they were able to do was very, very impressive. Getting Jalen Carter at 9, moving up one spot, trading with Chicago. Obviously, his story, a lot of stuff happened with that, with the whole the driving incident. We don't have to really jump into it too much. But what they were able to do was really, really impressive. And then when you compound with the fact that they were able to get DeAndre Swift for a chump change, that's also a great pick. Another freaking Georgia Bulldog. But being able to get Jalen Carter at 9, Nolan Smith at 30, which was insane considering he ran like a 4.3 at the combine, a little undersized, but a lot of juice on the edge. Me and Henny talked about it during the draft. These guys just collect, D-line prospects. And, Nolan Smith is listed as an edge rusher, and, if he might be better suited maybe for a 3-4, but they're going to use him in the Hassan Reddick role. We heard it all weekend. And him paired with Jalen Carter and then the guys they drafted last year, that D-line is just going to be forever evergreen, just very good. And then the rest of their draft was pretty good too. Getting Tyler Steen, he was a good offensive tackle at Alabama. I like the Kelly Ringo pick in the 4th round, a Phoenix guy who struggled a little bit one-on-one coverage, but with as good of a defense as they already have, I think that's going to help him a lot. Maybe they transition him to safety to replace what's his name, who they lost to the Lions. I can't even remember right now. Former Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You could see him maybe replacing him. And then going out and getting Tanner McKee to back up Hurts. He was great at Stanford in moments. And then even their 7th round pick, Moro Ojomo from Texas, he was a great D lineman that they can, kind of stash and develop. I loved their draft, and it's just kind of what the Eagles do. They had a really good story on NFL Network about just Howie Roseman and how he had a lot of misses in the draft prior to him getting moved to other parts of the back office, and then his resurgence as the GM again. And he's just completely changed his draft philosophy, and it's all about acquiring picks, taking chances on guys, trusting the locker room culture that they have there, and it's worked out beautifully. And he just did it again this year. He already had 2 first-round picks. He had a lot of middle-round picks that gave him the ability to move up in the draft even just a little bit to secure his guy in Jalen Carter. And that team was in the Super Bowl last year. They didn't really lose a whole lot, and they gained a shit ton in the draft. So I loved their draft. Did you have any thoughts on the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say just from the simple standpoint, and there's nothing really to add because you covered it nicely, but I just love that they just know what they are. And like we talked about, like they understand that D-line room is a strength, and it has been for a long time since their last Super Bowl run to this run. And they just don't shy away from it. It's just like, hey, this is something we know we can identify this type of player. We can plug them in. And as you mentioned with their culture, like they're not worried about the character issues. And frankly, like because they have depth in those areas, if it doesn't pan out, like they cut them, move on.
Yeah.
And it's good. So, you kind of have to love when you just do what you do best and kind of eliminate the risk.
Yep, I completely agree. My second winner of the draft, and again, these are in real no order. I would say the Eagles probably had my favorite draft, but my second winner would be the Seattle Seahawks. I loved what they did. Devin Witherspoon with that number 5 pick, he was by far the best corner in the draft. Was phenomenal at that resurgent Illinois team this year. And when you pair him up with the guys that they got in the draft last year, like Tariq Woolen, that defensive back room is just nasty, right? And they're trying to kind of rebuild that Legion of Boom a little bit. And that's a great way to do it. But then to go at pick 20 and get Jackson Smith and Jigba, who, what was it, man? Like 2 or 3 years ago in that national championship game or just playoff game, whatever, he was phenomenal. And that was in a room full of guys that are all in the league now, including a guy who's still on Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's phenomenal in his own right. But that guy had like 200 plus receiving yards that game, and he was just insane. To get him at 20 and to pair him up with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you don't have to be a big believer in Geno Smith, but they're giving him every reason to go out and be great again. And that's all you can do, right? When you got a couple first-round picks because you've made some good trades, that's just a phenomenal way to do it. I was a little salty because I really, really like Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he came close to the Ravens. But he's going to do really well in the slot on that team. And then to go out and get Derek Hall in the second round, phenomenal edge rusher out of Auburn. Their weakest point last season was on their D line. So to add a guy like Derek Hall who can develop and be that edge rusher that they needed last year, that's only going to help out that secondary as well. And then the second pick in the second round, Zach Charbonnet, me and Henny are really familiar with his game because he was an absolute beast for UCLA, former transfer from Michigan, really gave fits to everybody in the Pac-12, kind of a power back. He's going to really complement that backfield that they already had last year. And then the rest of their draft was, I think, it was okay. Cameron Young, just another D lineman. Anthony Bradford, just trying to build up that offensive line for Geno. Mike Morris out of Michigan. You take those blue blood program guys and you try to really work on those traits because they were a 4 or 5 star anyway. And then Ola Watami, a center out of Michigan as well, double dipped out of the blue and maize. Again, building that offensive line. Jarek Reed out of New Mexico. Don't know a lot about him, but Kenny McIntosh was a running back at Georgia. Again, just building up that running back room, and they're going to be a dangerous team. That NFC West is really, really one of the power divisions in football, and I absolutely loved that the Seahawks didn't go out there and pick a quarterback when they could have, and just trusted in their guy Geno. And if it doesn't work out this year, hey, you're going to have another pick next year. But in the meantime, let's do everything in our power to go and prove that we're right on this guy.
I just enjoyed watching them pick for Denver.
I knew you were going to do that.
I was like, what's great? They traded Russ, and now they just have all these picks that Denver's supposed to be taking. And I just love that. Like, thank you, Seattle. I mean, it's like watching, Peyton take that snap right over his head for a safety again. I enjoyed every second of it. So shout out to Seattle. Appreciate all that you've done. Your service for the AFC West. Forever indebted.
Yep, totally. My third team that I really liked their draft. This one's surprisingly controversial. They're coming up on a lot of different media outlets as one of their least favorite drafts, but it's the Houston Texans. Our guy Paul Wall's favorite team. But I loved their draft.
You do?
I do. I like their draft, dude. Like CJ Stroud at 2. I think he's actually a good to decent quarterback.
That I like for sure. I think they had it. I mean, you have to take a quarterback. So that part makes perfect sense. I just don't understand the next part of this.
Really, I love the Will Anderson pick. And the reason I love it is because you hired a former defensive great for you as your head coach who wrecked worlds in San Francisco with good defensive linemen. And Will Anderson was, up until draft season, for some reason, this happens every year too.
Yeah, I don't get this either, but I follow.
He was one of the best prospects, not just defensively, but period, in the entire college football scene. And yeah, they did give up a lot, right? They gave up their, what was it, the 10th pick or one of their picks. Yeah, and they gave up a future first, and they gave up a future, I think, second. But here's the thing, right? The Texans are kind of in the same mold as the Eagles, and their whole strategy is just acquiring draft picks. If you believe in a guy enough and you want a cornerstone pick, you got your cornerstone pick on offense, but if you can go out and get your cornerstone guy on defense for your new head coach who is a defensive-minded guy, I love the balls to go do that, right? And yeah, you do give up a lot, but Will Anderson, in my opinion, is going to be phenomenal. He's going to be really good, and you need a guy like that can just be your bell cow on the defensive line for a young team.
So I'm with you, and I think part of this is just the natural bias that we have towards the Texans, right? Because we, I think if another team does this, you might buy in a little more. I mean, so I think there is an inherent thing that's happening with the Texans here, but for the Texans to give up their first round pick knowing that they're likely going to suck again. I mean, I know that's probably not the plan, but they're gonna have to show me different. And if they end up
Hmm.
spending essentially like 2 top 10 picks to take a DN when you're gonna be sitting there to draft, I just doesn't. I just don't feel like they're a player away. They're not like an edge away. So it just seems like they need every possible pick to rebuild what is presumably a terrible roster based on their win loss record.
Well,
So that's the part I have a hard time with is just like when you need picks, when you need to amass picks, when you need to amass talent, you really can't be giving them away.
well, here's the thing, right? You might be right. They might not be great next year, and I agree with you on that, right? They're still a young team, still got a first-time head coach. Chances are they're not going to make the playoffs next year. Maybe not even come close, right? But I believe they still have the Browns pick next year. So they're going to have a first-round pick, okay? And then you have to look at it. We just talked up Will Anderson quite a bit, right? I think you're on the same track as me. He's one of the best prospects in this draft. And I know you probably haven't done this yet, but me being the sicko I am, I think if he would have been able to be in next year's draft, he would have been a top 3 pick, right? So you go out and you say, hey, let's go out and get our guy. Chances are, if they were to go into next year's draft, what would they have to draft? They just got their franchise quarterback. They have a franchise left tackle in Laramie Tunsil, right? You're not going to draft a receiver in the top 5 unless maybe Marvin Harrison Jr.,
But let's say
maybe.
they get the 2 pick and Drake May's sitting there, and maybe they love Stroud, but just the haul, right? That
Yeah,
you could
maybe.
potentially have. Like it just feels like, and right, we don't know what next year's draft is like, right? All these quarterbacks look good on paper right now for next
Yep.
year. Drake, May's going to be incredible. The USC kid Caleb. I think we know Caleb's going to be good.
Yeah.
Um, like I put money on that right now. But like
Yeah.
but like the thing that is scary is like that they actually do fall to one of these picks and then actually have to give it up and then potentially either miss out on the player or that draft capital that comes with that spot. And
Yeah.
when you're trying to rebuild a roster, it just feels like a year too early to make the move. I just feel like if they're closer, I like this a lot more. As it stands, I don't really get it. And like they actually somehow propped up the Cardinals, and the Cardinals look like they had a good draft to me because they kind of like manifested assets, which is what they need because their roster is terrible.
Yeah, for sure. But here's what I'm saying, right? Like you look at this time last year, for example, right? Tyler Van Dyke out of Miami was like everybody thought he'd be a top 5 pick. He didn't even enter the draft this year because he had a terrible year, right? I'm not saying that like Drake May is going to suck next year,
Yeah,
but the same way we're saying, we don't know for sure if the Texans are going to have a top 5 pick next year. We don't know if Drake May is going to go out there and have a terrible season. Now, if they were to get the number 1 pick because they sucked that bad, which I don't think they're going to suck that bad. I love their head coach. I like CJ Stroud. I doubt they're going to have the number 1 pick. Then, you're probably not looking at that. Like dominant edges like Will Anderson don't always come around, and if you're seeing that guy's available this year and you don't have to wait a full year and hope that somebody as good as Will Anderson's going to be there next year, I like the fact that they had the balls to go out and make the move now. And that's why I'm not crucifying them for making the trade. I think you go out and get your guy on both sides of the ball and you call it a day. And you still have draft capital because of that stupid Deshaun Watson trade. Like they're still in a good spot future wise, you know? Now, if they suck ass next year and their pick that's going to go um, to Arizona ends up being the number 1 pick, then hey, okay, you know what? I've been proven wrong, but all I'm saying is I understand kind of where their thought process was in making that trade, and I appreciate it, and I think they're better for it.
yeah. I mean, I like that you're backing them, right? Because I think, like I said, to kind of lead it off, I do think it's easy to just be like, the Texans suck; they'll continue to suck. So I think we know how this ends.
Yeah,
So I definitely appreciate you just standing by, like, hey, I think these are 2 really good players, and if they prove to both be really good 10-year players, then
they
then it's
look like
probably
geniuses.
fine, right? Like then there is
Yeah,
nothing wrong with it. Even if you miss out on some draft capital, if those 2 guys, like if this ends up being your quarterback for 10 years and this guy anchors your defense for 10 years, like you're fine with it and whatever the assets were, they were. But um, Yeah, it makes me nervous if I'm a Texans fan, and it's like one of those things where like just like we talked about with Philadelphia, like oh yeah,
Yeah.
because of the culture and because of like the organization, like we have a little more faith in taking that risk guy. In Houston, I'm like ugh. Which not that those
Yeah.
guys were risk guys, but I mean, putting faith in like, well, the organization's totally going to turn this around. Well, they might, and like I'm excited about their head coach too. But I also think that those things are going to take time. That's not a 1 year process to turn around a franchise that's been brutal.
Totally, I get it. As long as the McNairs are heading the ship in Houston, it's always going to be one of those things where you're like, okay, anything could happen. They could be
Yeah,
like the most self-destructive club in the NFL, and I totally get that. But with me, I think they finally made the right head coaching hire in D'Amico Ryans. They're not going to these old ass dudes, whether it's Lovey Smith or somebody's wide receiver coach. They finally got, I think, a guy that can head the ship. And I guarantee there was nobody happier in the draft room than D'Amico Ryans getting somebody like Will Anderson. Because I don't think every draft pundit thinks this, because it is very hyperbolic. But I think Will Anderson could be just as good as like a Nick Bosa. I think he has all the tools. I think he's incredible. He didn't have quite as much sack production in colleges last year, but you have to think too, the guy was probably tripled and double teamed every freaking snap on a not as great Alabama team. I think this guy's going to be phenomenal. And I think you take your guy, you believe in your draft board and you kind of have to future proof it, right? You have to look at who's going to be there next year. And like I said, dude, like they got their franchise quarterback, they got their franchise left tackle. What is the third thing that always goes in the top five? It's edge rushers. It's not receivers. It's not running backs. It's not middle linebackers. Maybe a DB, but they got a DB last year in Derek Stingley. So all I'm saying is like, if you want to solidify like the top four most important spots on your team and they could do it this year, go out and freaking do it. Because I think Will Anderson is a can't miss pick. That's why I like it.
if you are
Um,
listening and you're, I don't know, 25-ish, just keep in mind Alabama's still looking for a quarterback. So if you have some eligibility, they're looking for their Stetson Bennett. They've posted ads. Saban's looked longingly into the distance. So if you feel like that's you, your story could still be out there.
they did just get the kid from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He was not good. So you're right, Henny. The spot is still open. The rest of the Texans draft, I'll go through it pretty quickly. Juice Scruggs, the center out of Penn State, our boy Ben's guy. I think again, hey, you got to make sure that offensive line is real honed in for your franchise quarterback. Then they went out and got Paul Wall's guy, Tank Dell from the University of Houston. I say Paul Wall's guy because I swear I follow Paul Wall on Instagram because of course I do. And he was just constantly posting Tank Dell stuff. So you go out and get a weapon for CJ Stroud. Dylan Horton out of TCU. A lot of those TCU guys got drafted specifically to the Chargers, which we'll get into. Henry To'o, which I'm pretty sure I said that right. Former Tennessee linebacker that went to Alabama. Some sacrilege there, but a decent linebacker there. Jarrett Patterson probably going to get kicked out to guard from Notre Dame. Xavier Hutchinson, another weapon for Stroud, and then Braden Hill out of Pittsburgh, a safety. I like their draft a whole lot, man. And I know we just kind of went on a lot about it, but I thought it was a very strong draft. I think they're doing the right things. I think with that Browns pick next year, you probably do see that wide receiver get picked. And with that, I think you're starting to formulate a real solid team at the end of the day.
So who are your other winners? Or
my last winner, and I saved it for last because it pains me. It just absolutely kills me to give this team any kind of shine, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And
knew it.
I know Steelers Nation out there is like, wow, a Ravens guy picked us as one of his favorite drafts. But look, the Steelers have been competitive for years because they're good at drafting. And they finally went out there this year. They didn't draft the sexy wide receiver that everybody wants. They finally did what they were supposed to do, and they went out and got an offensive lineman, right? With Kenny Pickett last year, it was very apparent the guy was running for his freaking life every chance that he got. And that's not what you want out of somebody like Kenny Pickett. So they went out and they got Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. They went ahead and traded ahead of the Jets, took Aaron Rodgers' draft pick, and got their guy. Super, super athletic left tackle. He's got some girth to him as well. Former basketball player. He's going to be a good one for a long time. I think he fits that system really well. Then in the second round, they go out and get Joey Porter Jr. because of course they did. If you thought he was going to go anywhere else, you were just fooling yourself. They were lucky enough that they got him the first pick in the second round. But what a cool story that is, right? You watch your dad, most of his career playing in Pittsburgh, winning Super Bowls. And now you get to go back to the city that your dad played in and be an integral part of that team. They needed a defensive back. He fits their system pretty well, a very man-to-man coverage guy. And then the rest of their draft, Keanu Benton, they just add to that defensive line. Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Georgia, man, what a pick that was in the third round. When we talked all about it, right, during our SEC preview, that Georgia just had guys in that tight end room, and he was a big part of that. Just a freak athlete. And now you pair him with Pat Freiermuth. They have some great weapons in that tight end room.
Yeah, you just use him like a tackle. He's just a tackle that can catch, which is nice.
Yeah, great blocker, but supremely athletic. You got Nick Herbig in the fourth round. Like that guy was a monster in that Washington State game. If you watch that, really just twitched up Hawaiian kid. Of course, that's who the Steelers go out and get. Corey Trice, corner out of Purdue, again, just adding to that defensive back room. It was a real struggle for them last year. And then Spencer Anderson, a guard out of Maryland, again, just adding to that offensive line. I loved their draft. I think they hit on every single pick. And they really attacked. They melded need with best player available really well. And I also thought it was really impressive that they stuck to their guns with that first pick in the second round because there were a lot of people that wanted to trade with them to get Will Levis, and they stayed put and got their hometown kids. So, again, phenomenal draft by the Steelers. It pains me to say it, but they got a hell of a lot better this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Ben has to be so happy. I mean, it's basically an all Big Ten draft. So they just only took guys that he's super familiar with.
Yep.
They get Joey Porter Jr., who we've talked about way more on this thing, including his father's rendezvous at Circle K at 1 a.m., grabbing Four Locos. But yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, the Steelers, I feel like they have always drafted well, but they have to seem kind of like gotten a little lost of late. And obviously it's a little tougher when you just don't have a franchise quarterback that always makes it look like you're always smarter than you are.
Yep.
But it does feel like they really had a strong draft. So if you're listening, Ben, congratulations on all the Big Ten boys you could possibly want to watch. Slow, heavy football. You got to love it.
Perfect for the AFC North.
Exactly.
So obviously with the good comes the bad. My worst drafts, I'm going to start off with the San Francisco 49ers. Sorry, James. I didn't love what your team did. It is tough when you're starting the draft in round 3. I did like the Jair Brown pick, that safety out of Penn State. Again, congrats to Ben, another Penn State guy getting drafted. I thought he was a really good kind of hybrid safety that can play both deep or close to the line of scrimmage. That team is just so defensively driven that, you know that guy's probably going to be an impact guy. But then taking a kicker in the third round, that's just always weird. It typically never works out. Just ask the Buccaneers. Taking Cameron Latu in the third round, I thought there were better tight ends in the draft. Darrell Luter Jr. out of South Alabama, cornerback. Again, I thought the value was weird in the 5th round. Robert Beal, edge rusher out of Georgia, another guy that I guess you're just taking on pedigree at that point. D. Winters, he's a good linebacker out of TCU, so I do like that one. Brayden Willis, tight end out of Oklahoma. Ronnie Bell, wide receiver out of Michigan, kind of a guy that everybody always thought he was going to break out and never did. And then Jalen Graham, linebacker out of Purdue again, like John likes to say, a slow-footed linebacker. How good can he be? So didn't love their draft, but again, to give them some points. Tough to get a good draft grade when you're starting the third round.
But what happens where you draft a second tight end in the same draft?
Yeah, I don't know, man. You already have George Kittle, right? So I guess they're hoping Brayden Willis just really loves to block, you know?
Yeah, and I get their offense, so I can see where there's going to be a use case. Like, I don't know if they're slowly trying to move off a use check because he becomes too expensive, and they think someone's a similar part there. They kind of keep that H back, fullback position alive with the tight end. So it makes sense in terms of them providing depth, but it is pretty wild when you take a tight end, you have a tight end, and then you take another tight end. You're like, man, all right. I mean, you know they're going to score points somehow, some way, and the Niners, I think, ultimately will be fine. But they have been debatably they're terrible in the draft. I mean, despite themselves, they continue to win games, right? But obviously, they completely misjudged that quarterback situation. To their credit, they drafted two, right? I mean, so maybe I'll be eating my words on this whole tight end situation, but they've been kind of sloppy.
Yeah, how funny would it be if the Oklahoma kid ends up being better than Cameron Latu? Just very 49ers.
Yeah, just like we'll just do it twice, and then we're sure to get one right, which honestly is probably the math on most of these kids anyways. But
Yep. I mean, the Ravens used to do that too. You know, I mean, they took the kid out of Iowa State last year, and then obviously Coastal Carolina kid ends up being better. The year they took Dennis Pitta, they had taken Ed Dixon the round before him, obviously who ended up being better. So it's a sound strategy, but just a weird draft. I don't know. My second team, another guy we're gonna piss off that's been on the pod, but Matt Hesse, your New York Jets, man, their draft sucked. Will McDonald at 15. It was very apparent that you were shooting for Broderick Jones. Didn't get him, so you just kind of freaked out. You took Will McDonald. He had a lot of production at Iowa State, but I think even Will McDonald was surprised that he got drafted at 15, and he doesn't have a farm. Joe Tittman, the center out of Wisconsin, again, you're kind of shooting, you're throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks because you have a bad offensive line. Carter Warren, offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. You don't get a left tackle until the fourth round. Israel Abanaconda, running back out of Pittsburgh. That's like their third or fourth running back at this point, and you took him in the fifth round. Zaire Barnes, linebacker, Western Michigan. Jarek Bernard Converse, cornerback out of LSU. Been watching way too much soccer. Jesus Christ. And then Zach Kuntz. That is how you pronounce it. It is Kuntz. It is not the dirty word. Tight end out of Old Dominion. Again, like your third tight end. I just didn't see a lot of value in this draft. Even Will McDonald. You already have edge rushers. You've been taking edge rushers. You've been paying edge rushers. To take a guy in the top 20 of the draft, that it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, you know? And I think NFL Network was doing a little bit of, you know, trying to save the pick for him, where they were saying they think they're going to be playing with a lot of leads this year with Aaron Rodgers, which sure may be, and they want to have guys coming off the edge, but man, they had so many other needs that they could have attacked. I don't love that pick one bit. So Jets, you're my second team. Henny, you have any thoughts on the Jets?
I'll just say in their defense, it's hard to fault trying to find offensive line depth when you've invested in a quarterback. So I can at least understand some of the reasoning there, even if, as you say, they're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall, which is very possible. I do think it's also just funny, though, that regardless of where Rodgers goes, like no one will ever draft a weapon for him. Like there's just no way. There's just not a chance. Like I would have been if they would have drafted a quarterback, I would have like died of laughter. I mean, it would have just been everything I could have possibly wanted. But you know, we'll see. I try to be not too crazy with the draft just because I really don't like. I just don't know. Like I just don't know until these guys plug and play. And as we've talked about, 3 years from now, who knows? But some curious stuff.
Yeah, and to be fair, at least on that point, you know, they took a wide receiver in the first round last year. They signed some guys in free agency, so it's not quite the same as the Packers just ignoring the position forever. but I do get your point for sure. You know, there are some tight ends out there they could have drafted that would have been a lot better than a 7th round tight end. So my other team that failed the draft was the hometown kids, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is another team that their success has not really been because of the draft lately, at least. You look at their draft last year, a lot of the guys they took didn't really take off completely. I thought they had a weird draft. Felix Anudike Uzoma, the edge out of Kansas State. I don't know if he belonged in the first round. I know they're drafting at the very, very end. I get it. But, you know, I thought there were better edge rushers out there. I know you got to replace Frank Clark. You took George Karlaftis last year. You got to protect Chris Jones. You got to keep him in the middle. But I thought there was just better edges at 31. Rashi Rice, receiver out of SMU. I actually liked this pick. Believe it or not, I did watch some SMU games this year, and that guy always kind of stood out every game. Just a very juiced up guy, makes contested catches. Thought he was a good receiver. He's obviously going to be an all-pro for freaking Patrick Mahomes. Wanya Morris. A lot of people didn't know who this was. Former Tennessee tackle. I knew that because at one point I thought he was going to transfer to Arizona. They took him in the 3rd round. I thought that was a real reach. He was not great for Oklahoma last year. But when you lose Orlando Brown Jr., you got to find some way to backfill. Chamari Connor, safety out of Virginia Tech. BJ Thompson, another edge out of Stephen F. Austin. Keandre Coburn, defensive line out of Texas. He was pretty good at Texas. I like that pick. And then Nick Jones, cornerback out of Ball State. Just a lot of I'm not trying to use the lingo nowadays, but kind of mid all around, except that Rashi Rice pick. I do like that one. But again, just another team that like you're not going to point to their success due to the draft, at least lately. They do a really good job with like their undrafted guys, some of their later round guys. They haven't really been hitting where it matters in the draft. But I guess they don't really have to when they're picking at the end of the draft every year. So any thoughts on the Chiefs?
No. Do you know if they still kind of follow their their spark method and they're just kind of drafting guys that like, do they still just attack athleticism? I guess would ultimately be my question.
Yeah, I think they do to an extent. But I can't give you a solid answer. I didn't do any research on that this year.
Then yeah, they drafted a bunch of losers. I hope they all suck.
And that has nothing to do with them playing your division.
No, not at all.
My last team that got a failing draft grade for me was the Dallas Cowboys. Took Mozzie Smith in the 1st round when tight end was a glaring need. Offensive line was another glaring need, and they took a defensive lineman. I don't dislike Mozzie Smith. I think he's a good nose tackle. And when you have Micah Parsons, you got to free up blockers for him. But I just thought he was more of a 2nd round kind of guy. Luke Schoonmaker, tight end out of Michigan, took him in the 2nd round. Again, I didn't think he was a great tight end, and I think it was due to the fact that they didn't take one of the good tight ends in the 1st round. DeMarvion Overshown, linebacker out of Texas in the 3rd round. I actually like Overshown. I thought he was good at Texas. Vilayami Fehoko, edge out of San Jose State. He's pretty juiced up. I like him. He's going to be a good edge setter. Asim Richards, tackle out of North Carolina. Don't love that pick. Eric Scott Jr., corner out of Southern Miss. Deuce Vaughn, running back out of Kansas State. We're big Deuce Vaughn guys on this podcast. I know at least I am. I thought he was phenomenal at Kansas State. He is 5'5", though. Tough look. That's my favorite pick of their entire draft, though. Number 1, heartfelt story. His dad works in the scouting department, but he was also just a complete and utter baller at Kansas State, and he fits what they want out of a running back really, really freaking well. There was some smoke coming out of the draft that they still might re-sign Zeke. Don't do it. Just give the keys to the kingdom. You already have a great guy there at the number 1, and now you have Deuce Vaughn. The height could be a definite issue, but if you ask Darren Sproles, it certainly shouldn't be. And then Jalen Brooks, wide receiver out of South Carolina. I just thought that was an undrafted guy. So What are your thoughts on the Cowboys, John?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think everybody liked the story with Deuce Vaughn. It was a fun college football story that translated into an awesome phone call from his dad to his son, basically letting him know he was the pick. So, very cool moment. So that was very cool. And then otherwise, it's a bunch of stabs at it, man. These are not all names that I'm super familiar with. I'm not saying that I haven't heard of any of them or they're not familiar, but for me to make any real discernment, I have no freaking clue. But I assume the Cowboys will continue to be
Be the
mid
Cowboys. Yep.
as we stay cool here.
Yep. We're hip on this podcast.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, we speak in that language.
you're totally right though. The call with his dad was like, God, tugging your heartstrings like crazy. Like his dad
Yeah, that
saying,
was very
"Hey,
cool.
what do you think about coming to work with me next week?" Like, God, man, like Jesus, what a line! Shout out to his dad. That was great. The last thing, well, not the last thing, but one of the last things we're going to go through is just some surprises. We're not going to go through the whole draft of these teams, but it's just like they surprised me with what they were able to do. My first one was the Patriots. And what I mean by that is just the fact that they were able to trade back and still get just a phenomenal pick with Gonzalez out of Oregon. That guy was being talked up as a top 10 pick, and they got him at freaking 18. It's so frustrating that Bill Belichick just keeps getting these guys. I mean, outside of Mac Jones, but he gets these really good defensive players that he has no business getting, and being able to get Gonzalez, like he was really really freaking good at Oregon, and he's going to be so good in that Bill Belichick defense. So that was my first surprise. Did you have any thoughts on the Patriots?
Well, I just think that the Patriots, it's been proven time and time again, they're going to have the best cornerback in the league. Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
position that they absolutely develop, and I can't wait for the Chargers or Ravens to overpay him 6 years from now.
Yep, and then he's going to suck. So
Yeah.
my second surprise was the Detroit Lions. A lot of people kind of shit talked their draft. I thought it was a decent enough draft, but I understand why people talk bad about it because it was a surprising draft. I think really it comes really more the Jahmyr Gibbs pick so early. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I thought he was phenomenal for Alabama. He's a really smooth runner. And I get people are like, well, you already have like a decent running back room. You go out and you get who is the guy from Chicago, their former like second round pick.
Montgomery.
Yeah, David Montgomery, and you already had Swift, but obviously they didn't care a lot for Swift. So they went out and got their guy, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be really good for them. And then I think them getting Hendon Hooker was just awesome in the third round. An older guy, but you know what? Like if Jared Goff returns to late Rams Jared Goff, I think he's a good pick for them. And then the other surprising pick for them was Jack Campbell out of Iowa. But Jack Campbell was phenomenal at linebacker. So surprising draft. I liked their draft. They didn't make my top four, but they were one of the biggest surprises just because they took Jahmyr Gibbs with their first pick. Did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm not a big. I don't love taking a running back at this point, so I think that's why they're going to take the hit. But beyond that, I like what they did, and I love that they get Hendon Hooker. And I just want to say that I don't really understand the NFL being worried about a guy being 24. Like, there's a point in my life where I have probably made this argument where I'm like, hey, I don't want this, and we laughed about it with Stetson and his age and blah blah blah. But these GMs aren't even going to be around when these guys' careers are over if they're any good. I
Yep.
mean, most of these guys are not like the GM's lucky he has a 10-year run. So why is he worried about the quarterback, the linebacker, the whoever coming in a little bit older? If you get 5 good years of production out of these guys, great. You did a good job in the draft. So I just think it's kind of funny that we continue to like as I get older, I'm just like, what do we even like? Why are we talking about their age so much? Like, I understand it maybe with the quarterback position where you are maybe that super hopeful where you're going to get 15 years out of this guy. But again, those guys are an absolute coin toss too, and it's 1 in 4 where you actually get that guy. So, uh, and Hooker's just a reminder to me of like how stupid that conversation is. The more I get perspective looking at the league year after year.
Yeah, and to be frank, quarterback is one of those positions where they can play really good, you know, till late in their 30s. You look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Tom Brady, and I'm not saying Hendon Hooker is going to be on their level, but it is one of those positions where if you can sling it, you can play well into your 30s. And it's one of those things too where like, look, they're not looking for a guy to come in there and play 20 years. They're looking for a guy that's going to take over for Goff in a year. And Hooker is recovering from an ACL injury. Like he gets a full year to recover, and then he gets the keys of the castle probably. Like, and that's a good Lions team. And frankly, Hendon Hooker, in my opinion, was better than Will Levis last year. He was better than Anthony Richardson last year. Now I get why Richardson went number 4.
And he might be better than Jared Goff right now. Like I'm not.
He might be.
I mean,
Hooker
I know Goff had
phenomenal.
a good year. I know Goff had a good year, but I still have. I'll never shake the idea of like seeing Goff late in a game and knowing what that means for that team. It is you're dead. Like if you're actually behind and it's Jared Goff, you're dead. So they had to address it on some level. And I like that if they didn't get their guy, which like there wasn't going to be their guy at 12, that they found a guy with a really nice arm in the 3rd round. So I think for whatever you saw from the running back position, I love what they did in getting a quarterback late. So I'm with you. I think it was a good little surprise. And hey man, as as I am getting married, like I inherited the Detroit teams as my secondary teams, which is not really what you want. I mean, it's really not ideal. The Red Wings have given up,
baggage, dude.
and yeah, but I'm like, come on, Lions, like give me something. So I'm with it.
Yeah, totally, dude. My next surprise was just I don't even know if it was much of a surprise. I was surprised that they actually freaking did it, because you were sending me rumors of this like a few days prior, but Bijan Robinson going to the Falcons. I was shocked that they did it, because like that's a team, they've done a lot this offseason that was really good. They've really built up that defense really well, but you're still like, you don't have a quarterback. Don't tell me that Ritter's the guy. You don't have a quarterback. You had a good running back last year in Tyler Algier. He had over 1,000 yards, and I love Bijan. Like, these two guys on this podcast are both from Tucson. We love Bijan. He's going to be very, very good. But it was just a very surprising pick, because it's like, out of everything that you guys need, you went running back. But at the end of the day, like, if you believe in a player and you think he's the second coming of LaDainian Tomlinson, I guess you take him at 8. And I was just surprised that they actually did it.
Yeah, same. I mean, so I can't criticize the Lions for taking Gibbs right. It's the same problem, and I think it's actually worse with them, because the Lions feel like they're close to putting a complete roster together at minimum, and like you might just argue the gap is at quarterback. As to where the Falcons, you're like, guys, you have no direction, and you're going to build the entire team around a running back. So weird. I'm actually just a little bit nervous for like the Falcons, but more so nervous for my guy Bijan, that he is just going to serve as the Christian McCaffrey of the Panthers, like where he is the offense, and like it is fun, and yes, we all know who he is, and everybody's going to wear that. He's going to wear that Michael Vick 7, by the way.
That's pretty slick, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to not see him in 5, and I'm kind of used to him in 5 now. But like, if he's going to wear 7 and say, hey, look, let's sell that jersey again, or just dust off the old one and have it reprinted with some new names on it. But yeah, I don't know, man. That one bums me out, because I was honestly hoping Bijan would just slide a little bit, actually be in a place where I believe in what's going on. And now I'm like, oh gosh, running back, really bad things can happen, man. Like it can go bad and go sideways quick.
I was really hoping he'd go to the Eagles, dude. He was right freaking there, 1 pick away. God, that would have been a match made in heaven if he would have ended up in Philly. Like,
he would have been incredible on that. Yes, that would have been incredibly dynamic. And instead, Desmond Ridder.
Good luck, but we still stand for you, Bijan. We still stand for you, Tucson legend. So
yeah, we got you, buddy. But
my last surprise was not a player, and it was a surprise to both John and I. We texted I think we had the same exact idea at the exact same time, but it was the concert at the end of the first round for the Chiefs. Like, there was no announcement. The poor edge rusher from Kansas State, they announced his name and they immediately broke out in song. And it was like just your run of the mill like cover band. It wasn't even Motley Crue. They saved that magic for the next night. It was just a cover band, and they just started partying. There was some Beastie Boys being played,
Yep.
and watching a bunch of like Midwestern like old white guys dancing to Beastie Boys was just, I was in shock. I didn't turn off my TV for like 5 minutes, and then it wasn't because I was enjoying the music. I was in utter shock. I was like, this is not actually happening. Is it? Like, I don't know who is the event coordinator is in Kansas City, but like, holy hell, man, you got everybody.
It was incredible. I'm with you. I was absolutely taken aback. I thought it was breathtaking to see grown men from Kansas City in their Zubaz pants, all singing Beastie Boys Fight for Your Right to Party, which of course is the latest hit in Kansas City. I assume it just got there. Very excited for you folks to learn about the Beastie Boys. You guys are going to love them. Hold them tight because they'll be gone just before you know it. Incredible to watch. Like sometimes just like the things that are so innocuous are the best things. And I just was watching in like shock/horror. It's like, why
Yes.
is this a thing? Like, what is going on? This is like the least hip thing ever. Like, bring out Goodell, have him dance. Like let's really make it extreme.
Bring out Andy Reid, dude.
Yeah,
Oh my
like
God.
this is like unbelievable. But without fail, when I see Chiefs fans in the wild, they're very Chiefsaholic. They're just weird people. Like there's like Chiefs Kingdom honestly seems like hell to me. Like I know like the Patrick Mahomes part seems like a lot of fun. The Kelsey part seems like a lot of fun. The rest of it honestly seems like utter trash. And I'm glad don't have anything to do with it. That was like their shining moment, and it's freaking hilarious. I mean, I'm sure it's a fun stadium, and they get the barbecue going. It has like a college vibe. I think there's some good things about it, but I watched in horror, frankly, as they did all that. And I'm just glad you acknowledge what I see. I thought I was literally going to be alone because I'm like, who would have it on now? Like, there's no reason to have it on now. But like, I didn't change the channel just like you, and it was like, what the fuck is going on, dude? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was like, did I accidentally eat the wrong shit, or like, what is going on? Like,
Dude, they didn't even have like Tech Nine come out, like a Kansas City guy. No, they had a cover band singing "Fight for Your Right to Party,"
yeah,
and like I felt so bad for Azama because like every other pick, they had some kind of analysis breaking down why this guy was a great pick or whatever. No, it was just Chiefs Kingdom breaking out into the freaking song and dance. It was the most awkward. Like it was like a slasher film where like the main character dies at the end and you're just left like, what the hell just happened? Like that's exactly what that was, and it was the biggest shock of the night. And that's saying something on draft night.
the song was released in like 1986, dude.
Oh man, Kansas City never changed. Good
It was
Lord.
just like it happened yesterday for the Chiefs, though. Like, like it
You're
just
like, woo!
hey, well, it's new to me, pal. It's new to me. Yeah, like whatever, man. If you just found out, dude, in 15 years, that Paul Wall concert's going to be sick in Kansas City. Like, dude, when they find out about this guy, they're going to be fucking fired up. Let me just say that.
Yeah, dude. My God. But yeah, it was a cool draft night. The only thing I do want to end on, obviously, everybody knows I'm a Ravens fan. You're a Chargers fan. Ravens draft. I don't know, man. I left the draft like happy but not happy. I loved the Zay Flowers pick. Like, good Lord, what a great pick. He's gonna kill it in the slot. He had the most yards after catch in college football. Just a super, super great route runner. And now you pair him with Odell Beckham Jr. and you pair him with Rashad Bateman. Like all of a sudden that Ravens defense could be low-key nasty. And I know the Ravens don't have a great track record of drafting receivers. We've been over that. I've been made fun of a billion times, but Zay Flowers was pretty universally loved by like every team and like every draft pundit. So I have some faith. The rest of the draft, not having a second round pick hurt, but the Ravens were all over social media saying our second round pick is Roquan Smith. Ha ha ha. And it's like, that's not how that works, but okay, I get you. The third round pick, Trenton Simpson. That was a giant fuck you to Patrick Queen. They didn't pick up his option. His literal like draft comparison is Patrick Queen. So I did like the pick, but it was weird. Just because like we needed a good cornerback, and we didn't do that till like the 5th round. And even then, I'm like, is this guy even like? Is he really that juiced up? Is he going to make that much of an impact? I'm not sure. Getting Tavius Robinson out of Ole Miss in the 4th round, kind of a project guy, Canadian. I don't know. Just I get nervous with projects. The aforementioned 5th round corner, Caillou Blue Kelly. He was good at Stanford, but he's gonna have to play in like nickel corner because like he's good at tracking guys like on short routes and intermediary routes, but he gets burnt a lot. And then they took a offensive guard out of Oregon. I'm gonna try to say this, but I'm gonna butcher it. Mala Esela Amaveye Laalu. I had never heard of him. I'm not gonna lie to you. I watched Pac-12 football all football season, never heard of him. All I know is he's a huge Hawaiian guy, which that usually works out okay. I did love the 7th round pick, Andrew Voorhees. That guy tore his Achilles. Yeah, his Achilles at the combine. Still went and did the bench press, pumped out 35 reps, and he was a monster at USC. So that's a really good future pick. Loved that. So there were a couple of guys I really loved in the draft, but there were some guys where I have some real questions, and we'll see what happens. Like I told you and Hesse, like the draft you can't like truly grade until like 3 years later, and this is definitely a draft where you're like, okay, we're gonna have to see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, the same goes with the Chargers, right? I mean, and, when obviously we had some back and forth because we're all drafting wide receivers, so then it's like, which one of these guys is actually good? Sure, Zay Flowers is good, allegedly. He's a yak guy, but he also drops the ball. Looking up Quentin Johnson, you telling me he can't catch?
Yeah,
I agree. True. I don't like watching him body catch, but they have like actually Zay had a worse drop rate than Quentin Johnson, but they're both sitting at 10, 11%, neither of which is great. So I'm concerned for all of us. As I told you, like the Ravens draft another fast receiver, basically, or at least that's what it feels like. That generally is not played well. The Chargers, of course, are drafting like, oh, we got a big guy. So I assume he'll be hurt soon. Like I have mixed emotions about all of this. I want to be optimistic. Like at least I feel like there is a potential that he's a game breaker in terms of size and speed combination. If you were going to take a risk at wide receiver, I'm kind of okay with taking a shot in that position. And I think everybody's floor is going to be pretty high with Herbert throwing the ball from a wide receiver standpoint. So even drafting the speed in the 4th round, hey, maybe that guy ends up being a deep threat, catches one ball a game every 4th game, and that's good enough to keep us competitive from time to time. They had a depth on both lines. I thought that was fine. The only thing I don't understand from the Chargers, and like as soon as you actually start to feel good because they put some pieces together, you're like, okay, wide receiver was a position of need, a kick returner. Yes, that was a position of need. If you're adding depth on the lines, great. They drafted a kid from USC who's led the nation in sacks. Like what's wrong with that? Like, right? And he shows some versatility to play on multiple parts of the line. I feel like they get a versatile piece in Deion Henley, who can play multiple linebacker positions, maybe move him on the edge, use him similar to Van Noy. Love a lot of things they do, and then they get to the 7th round, they draft a quarterback when we already re-signed Easton Stick, and we're just going to keep 5 quarterbacks on our roster for no fucking reason while we have literally like one of the best quarterbacks. And like I get that you want to have a backup quarterback, but we don't need 4. And they continue to detriment their roster by keeping extra guys on. We're like one of the only teams in the league that doesn't carry like a 5th or 6th receiver, which actually bore itself out during the playoffs where we almost had no receivers to play. So like this team is annoying as shit. So like, despite some of the things that I felt positive about early on, as soon as they took Duggan, your namesake, which, of course is adorable for this podcast, I was kind of a little bit annoyed at that point. So that's my Chargers rant in a nutshell.
What I will say, I gave you a lot of flack for the Quentin Johnston draft pick, right? When he was good at TCU, he was fucking good. He just had a lot of moments where you're like, dude, what the hell was that? With that said, with Mike Williams perpetually hurt, he fits the exact mold of Mike Williams. He's not as fast as Mike Williams, but like I get the thinking behind that because you just said it. Like your receiver room's perpetually hurt. I loved the Tui Peloto pick. Like you said, dude, that guy was a certified beast at USC. Loved the Dayon Henley pick. What was funny was I swear our teams, like, I think they just copied each other's draft boards because, like, we took linebackers at the same time a few years back. We took Patrick Queen. You guys took Kenneth Murray. Both of those guys didn't get their fifth-year options picked up, and they pretty much they drafted their replacements in the third round. So Dayon Henley, I think, is going to be very, very good. The guy played like running back, wide receiver, like quarterback, I think, at one point. Like he's just, you want to talk about versatility. That guy is the epitome of that. Darius Davis, like really, really good kick returner, which you just said, you guys needed that big time. I didn't hate the Max Duggan pick, and it's not because our names are similar. I just think Easton Stick's not that good.
He's not. He's terrible. Just why sign him? This is what I don't understand. If you identify Duggan as a guy that you're going to draft, why are you re-signing Easton Stick? Then if you draft Duggan, like you're like, fine. That makes perfect sense. It looks like you guys actually have a plan. But when you guys show up without a notebook or pencils, you look like idiots. Duggan
fits the backup mold really, really well for the Chargers, though. Like he is like, he's like so diet Dr. Pepper to Herbert, but he does some of the same things, kind of like can get out of the pocket, can run around pretty well, has a pretty good arm.
And he kept all the receivers.
I like that pick a lot, like a lot. But I get where you're coming from, because if you're a team that just carries 4 quarterbacks, you got to think, even if you re-sign the guy, does that preclude you from cutting him if Duggan does really well in training camp? I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too, but I'm just so tired of us carrying 3 quarterbacks that it's like an emotional trigger for me. So it's really not Duggan. So just so you know, Duggan, it's not you. It's just an emotion. Yeah, it's just it's a Chargers fandom thing that I've been carrying for a while, and and now I'm not really healthy enough to be in a relationship with you.
Yeah. But to be honest, dude, I loved your draft. I thought you guys did a phenomenal job. I thought you melded kind of need with best available really, really well. So the only thing I would have done differently is taken Jordan Addison instead of Quentin Johnston, but hey, maybe he'll prove me wrong next year. So I just get a lot of Rashad Perriman vibes from him, and that's just because I'm hurt. We're both dealing with a lot of emotional pain right now.
I think the floor is like so very much helped by the fact that Herbert's throwing the ball, to where no one's going to look that bad. But I think, to your point, what I just don't know is who the high end guy was. I think we both wanted Jackson Smith, so I think we both were in the same boat where, like, dude, one more pick. And we're both probably happier and like not having any thoughts or doubts about it. I'm like, all right, cool. So we have exactly Keenan Allen's replacement at worst, which feels like a better upside than the potential Mike Williams, because Keenan's just open all the time, and JSN probably feels like he's going to be the same.
I love that you guys went like wide receiver your first pick, though, because like we keep mentioning, right? Like you have a phenomenal quarterback. You have a guy on his rookie deal. Like give him every freaking weapon you can like provide him. The only thing you guys didn't do that I wish you would have done was get a tight end.
Same.
That was like the one thing I'm like, all right, Chargers, what the hell are we doing? Like, that's like the one thing you guys don't have. But, maybe that's just not a position of need for them. Maybe, I don't know, you guys don't use tight end a lot, I guess. I don't know. So,
I mean, it's definitely useful. I don't know. I mean, we definitely get a lot of targets to our tight end, so I don't totally get it. But I think with like Parham, and I think they just think they have enough guys that can kind of fill that void and make it serviceable. But we'll see.
Didn't get a running back either, which was also very strange.
That I can only just hope that means that they're going to come to some sort of resolution with Eckler, and if long as like that, and then maybe a Spiller eventually shows up and can handle one carry this year. I have no idea.
You could have got DeAndre Swift, so I don't know. Those were my only 2 kind of like bugaboos for your draft. Was just I like that you got weapons, but did you get the right weapons? So no. Overall, really fun draft weekend, as it always is. It's like my favorite time of the year. My wife hates it because I'm glued to the TV for 3 days straight, and she just does not understand why I'm watching 400 people getting drafted, and she doesn't understand why I know each and every one of their backstories. But we have our own passions, so that's what makes us great. So Outside of that, the NBA playoffs are happening. We're in the second round. Our Phoenix Suns are shitting the bed very, very badly right now. Game one, they ran into a Nuggets team that played the best game I think they've ever played. When you have Aaron Gordon missing like 2 shots, you know something is afoot. And then game two, they had the game kind of in the bag, and then Chris Paul gets hurt, and you're leaving the reins of the offense to Cameron Payne, and that can only lead to pain. They blew an 8 point lead, ended up losing by double digits because Jokic is a monster and the refs are assholes. That's what I thought about the game.
Yeah, I didn't see it much differently, man. It's a there's no bench for the Suns, so we know it's all has to come from the starter. So, despite the dumb Suns contingent of fans out there that is like, oh, Chris Paul's out, like that's hilarious and fine. It's not hilarious and it's not fine. Um, they really genuinely count on him for production, whether we like that or not. That is the reality. He's still a better player than really anything that's you can find on that bench. As frustrating and as disappointing as that may be, that's the reality. I also continue to contest that the referees and the officials let Jokic gets away with whatever he wants. Um, I'm not saying that the guy's like fouling and cheating the entire game, but he's definitely quote unquote crafty and does all the bullshit that I would expect of a Euro and definitely
Yep.
gets away with it. And the tough part is just that it's hard for Ayton to stay on the court when Jokic has hit everybody, can absolutely throw his arm down on someone, doesn't get called for a foul, like basically plays the whole game with 1 or 2 fouls, which is like unbelievable considering how
Yep.
physical he's playing. And Ayton's always in foul trouble. So
Yep.
I expect the series to somewhat flip in that regard, probably coming home. And so maybe the Suns get some calls. And I think ultimately they still have the two most dynamic and best. I still think KD and Booker are actually better play. When I watch Jokic, I feel like a lot of it's happening based on reputation at this point. Frankly, like he is still an incredible player, but he doesn't wow you. He doesn't dominate you. And honestly, when they took Murray out of the game, everything was fine. The Suns just really struggled to continue to put points on the board. You can't score 85 and win a game. I mean,
No, they
like
can't shoot
that's
right
a
now.
joke. I mean, yeah, and KD shot terribly. I mean, I don't remember do you remember what the numbers were from three? I know we like
Like
tossed it
5 for
around.
33 or
Yeah, but
something.
they
Like,
shot like less than 19% or something like that. So
it's pitiful.
and some of those were open looks for KD. And like I really think if he just cashes in some of those open looks that he gets, I mean, that Booker threw that same pass that we oohed and awed over multiple times, again to an open look for KD who just doesn't have it going from the 3 point line. From the mid, he's still going and he's still getting to the
Yeah.
bucket and he's doing a lot defensively. So if you're going to cry about Bridges and Cam Johnson, neither of those guys are defending the rim the way KD has done in this series. So you're still not selling me, but
Yeah,
it's
no, he's still
frustrating.
been like it's so weird because like I want to be like, man, Katie hasn't been that good this series, but like he's doing everything else really well. Like great defense,
Yeah.
hitting the middies. We would be lost without him. Booker though, good God, what a god amongst men Devin Booker is.
Yeah, he
Like,
has 35 points now, and I'm like pissed at him still because he turned it over a couple times.
yeah,
Like I'm like, dude, that wasn't his best game. And then it's like he's 35 and 10. And so
yeah.
you're like, dude, I don't know what the expectations are for this guy now, but they're otherworldly.
Here's the thing: when you have Damian Lee out there not hitting anything, you have Landry Shamet playing any minutes of basketball for some godforsaken reason. Campaign bringing the ball up when you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker out there, and you decide I'm going to throw up just a shit shot because I'm campaign. That's what I do. And then your center rotation consists of Bismack Biyombo, who can't score for anything, good defender but can't score, and Jock Landale, who can't defend but can kind of score. It's not great. Their bench has been putrid. You got to think going back to Phoenix, they have to play one of Terrence Ross or TJ Warren just to see if it freaking works.
Yeah, I can't
Like,
imagine how they don't.
yeah, you have to have some level of shot making off the bench because right now, man, it is, whew, it's bad.
4 points off that bench.
Yeah,
Four.
Torrey Craig's still doing some nice hustle things, but he can't score. It's just not good right now at all. I mean, dude, Okogie's been terrible. Like,
Yep.
good God. So I don't know. There's got to be some rapid changes here soon with that bench, or they're going to get swept.
Yeah, I mean, basically, all my prayers are in the fact that this Suns team, like the Damian Lees of the world, hit three threes at home. For whatever reason, they play a touch better at home. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
guy knocks down three shots that he didn't, and that swings the game. My frustration from like an officiating standpoint, because I by no means am I saying the officials cost the Suns the game, but was that the Suns really had a really nice control of the game, and the only thing that was kind of limiting them was that they literally had not even been to the free throw line. I mean,
No.
like they took two free throws. I don't remember what the end total was. Maybe they got to like six, but Devin Booker was like getting raked over and over again, and that's where my frustration comes in. Where Jokic is throwing his shoulder into Ayton like time after time after time,
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's fine, and like if that's how we're gonna call this, like whatever. But then you got to let Ayton be physical back, and like there's got to be some things where you can't be calling him for like a freaking screen 35 feet away from the basket. Like, get the
Yeah.
fuck out. I mean, I don't. It's
Bruce
been a
Brown
frustrating
shouldn't be
series, man.
able. Bruce Brown shouldn't be able to like go full force, throw his entire body into Aiden, and then you call a foul on Aiden.
Right,
Like,
exactly. And there was there was just like some really tough ones. There was just some interesting things going on there. That seemed pretty obvious to me that there's like just that the typical home lean. It wasn't anything like,
yeah,
I'm not, I didn't have to call in to 30 for 30 to put together a Tim Donaghy tape or anything, but
no.
it was less than ideal.
The Nuggets did what they were supposed to do, right? Jamal Murray went absolutely bonkers game one, and then Jokic went bonkers the next game. So, like, that is what you expect out of the Nuggets team. But, like, again, like you keep saying, if Kevin Durant's shots start falling, if the bench steps up in any kind of way, just get to double digits, please, for the love
Yeah.
of God. I think this next game, like, especially the Chris Paul out, you have to, like, at every turn have either Kevin Durant or Devin Booker bring up the ball. You cannot let Cam Payne bring up the ball because he's just going to go, he's going to lose his mind and he's going to do something stupid. So, especially with him missing so much time, you just don't know what to expect from that guy.
Yep.
So, I don't know. They're going to have to change up some things for sure.
Yeah, they're in trouble. And it seems like, I mean, they're saying day to day with Paul, but there's just no way.
No,
He's
dude.
done for the series at absolute minimum, and we might not ever see him again. I mean,
And it's sad because it's what 3 years in a row that he's gotten hurt in the
yeah,
playoffs. So,
yeah. And that part's
I mean,
predictable, which is probably, I mean, I don't know, probably in your heart of hearts too, knew like that this year in terms of a run, it would be tough, just because you had to it's just hard to put the pieces around these guys, right? And to retool it. And because KD got hurt, and as part of that process, not have the additional time to make sure all that's working.
yep.
Some of that stuff seems to be showing up. But again, all of that said, like, I'm not totally freaked out because I'm like, hey, man, like KD and Book, I mean, with the way Book's playing now, I'm like, God, if I get the KD that I saw just a year ago with this Book,
Dude,
like they're okay, and all of a sudden we can win
six
these games.
weeks ago.
Because I'm still not really sold on the Nuggets. Like Jamal Murray completely disappeared in game two. He literally, I mean, he's a loser. He was an absolute zero. I don't care
Yeah,
what
he
anybody
sucked.
says. So anybody who ever wants to have the Murray Booker conversation, like, let me show you game two, and you can tell me how ass Booker was while he dropped 35 while your kid couldn't hit a shot. So I
Yeah.
mean, like, it is not even close. It is day and night. And again, that conversation about who is the best shooting guard is over. Like that is not even a conversation if you're watching basketball, which is the only reason I'd say I'm frustrated. I'm just frustrated for Book. Like that's really where my angst comes from. Is I'm like, man, this guy's like giving it all, and he's like absolutely now like stepping into his prime, and we just have to get a couple things right around him.
Yep. The rest of the playoffs, the Heat are apparently really good. So,
Yeah,
you know, they dropped the playing game and then they haven't turned back. They beat the Bucks, which holy shit. And then they go in and beat the Knicks at home in New York. So, I guess Heat culture lives on. We had declared it dead. It's not dead. Jimmy Butler is fucking good. He is a absolute animal. I think every team wishes they had a Jimmy Butler on their team because that guy just never says die. Like that team is just a bunch of really good role players and Jimmy Butler. And they're gonna ride the thing all the way probably to the next round.
The Knicks did win tonight, so they did get it back to even. So it is 1-1. So the Knicks aren't completely out of it. They at least battled back, but and that was without Jimmy tonight, though. So Jimmy's still banged up. I don't know. He can't continue this. This like Jimmy Butler's gonna eventually lose his wheels here. And I don't even know if it's gonna be the Knicks because I mean, I will say the one thing about the Knicks, since I just get a chance to do this, I have to love what Jalen Brunson's done and how he's more valuable than Luka and how he's proven that during the duration of this playoffs. He's obviously been able to carry a team to and through a series. And so I think it's safe to say that Luka's trash. I think we've proven it. We continue the stance on this podcast that Luka is garbage. So just a nice way to get a cheap shot in for really no reason whatsoever. But
Yeah, we're definitely still not scoring full over last year's playoffs. So
I'm totally fine.
But yeah, Brunson is very, very, very good.
He's just
and
better
he
than
is
I
worth
thought. Yeah.
It is hilarious that the Mavericks decided not to give him a $55 million extension, and now it's just destroying them in the end.
Yes.
He had 30 points tonight, so good for him.
He's balling.
And then we had the other game tonight, Lakers Warriors. Lakers coming out on top in Oakland, dude. Like well, in San Fran now, but what a game that was. AD has just completely turned on the switch this playoffs. He's staying healthy, which is probably the most impressive thing. D'Angelo Russell had a good game, and this is a podcast that we just perpetually shit on him, but he had a pretty good game. LeBron turned it on at the end of the game, and they got really, really good minutes from Dennis Schroeder. So my biggest takeaway from this game was like, how the hell do you not give the ball to Stephen Curry when you're down 3 points with like 8 seconds left, or how many seconds they had left? I get Jordan Poole hit 6 threes this game, but like
I'm like everybody knows that, but Jordan Poole, bro, and Jordan Poole is going to continue to be Jordan Poole. Like he is D'Angelo Russell in disguise in a Warriors uniform. Like he is just a fucking clown. I'm like cursing way more in this podcast, but like when it comes to the NBA, I just like lose my mind because I'm like Jordan Poole is such a clown. Yeah, that part was frustrating. Like if you're a Warriors fan, but I think ultimately they'll battle back in this. Like this is going to be like. I think throw the home and away stuff out with this series. This is going to be about like who has the energy. It's a bunch of veterans, and it's just like who figures it out that night. And I can see this one. This is going to be a long series. I think we're 100% in for a long one, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's settled by another Steph Curry hero event where he just goes nuclear.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me, though, that the Warriors hit 21 threes and they lost the game. It came down to free throws, which if you've been watching the Lakers since the trade deadline, like that's what they do. They get to the line, big surprise, and they hit a lot of mid-range shots. So Suns, if you're watching, that's how you do it against the Nuggets. That's the secret sauce. It doesn't always have to be 3-pointers because the Lakers hit 6 of them. So shout out to the Lakers. They've been really, really good these playoffs. So if AD can stay healthy, keep doing his thing, LeBron's going to do his thing no matter what. And if they can get some good minutes out of Russell, hey, they're a dangerous team.
Yeah, Lakers look strong. I mean, and like I said, they're going to be bigger and just like tougher, and they're probably going to win the paint. And then, as you mentioned, the Warriors shot 33s in the first half, so they're going to launch. They're going to play the math game, and so that's what they're. So it's an interesting series. It's like a clash of styles, and I think you're just generally kind of seeing that in the league. You are definitely getting this. There's definitely the teams that just shoot threes, and then there's sort of like teams that play basketball. So it's interesting to see what's going on here. And I shouldn't say that just because you're shooting threes, you're not playing basketball, but it's definitely more of an analytic approach. That's for sure.
Yep. And then the other surprising result from the second round was the Sixers going into Boston without Joel Embiid, the MVP. It was announced today. And they went in and they beat the Celtics. Harden had an incredible game, had 45. And their bench kind of stepped up. They got 26 out of Maxey. He's been phenomenal. Melton came out hot, had 17, former Sun great. And they got 18 out of Tobias Harris. Meanwhile, the Celtics were who we thought they were. They were the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum show and nobody else. Brogdon did have a really good game, so I take that back. But everybody else really did kind of suck. And it really did just come down to, James Harden couldn't miss, and the Sixers had something to prove.
Yeah, and the Celtics are another team that's just going to chuck threes.
Yep.
So either they go down or they don't. So there's going to be like some volatility in that series too. Although I'm definitely surprised to see Philadelphia pull that one out. But not so much after I saw what I saw with the Celtics Hawks series. That
Yeah.
put a lot of doubts in my head that I frankly didn't have before that. So you got me now, Celtics. I'm not sure. Good luck, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Both these teams like to chuck the 3-pointer, right? The Sixers had 38.
Yep. Yep.
The Celtics had 26. It's a lot of 3-point attempts. It just turned out that the 76ers were more about that life. They hit 17 of them. A lot of them coming from Harden. He went 50% from three. And Melton, dude, 5 of 6. Like, that guy's certainly developed a shot since he's been in Phoenix. So
Yeah, I like him actually.
Good for him. Yeah. That's going to be a fun series, especially if Embiid can come back healthy. I think they actually stand a decent chance of maybe knocking down the Celtics, and then you and I look like clowns because we had the Celtics and the Bucks as
Yeah, absolutely.
the for sure options in the East, and it's just turned out to not be the case. With that said, though, if it ends up being the Sixers or like anybody from the Knicks, Cavs, or not Knicks, Cavs, but Knicks,
I still
Heat
can't believe
series.
it's the Heat either. I still can't believe it either,
Dude,
man.
Jesus Christ, yeah. The West is still looking like the premier conference, right? So
Yes.
it's going to be interesting. The playoffs are absolutely on fire. The games have been phenomenal. Even the shitty Suns games that we like to complain about have been very good. They've been pretty back and forth. Even game one, even though the Suns didn't look great, they were fighting back quite a bit, trying to get it under double digits. And it was fun to watch. So the playoffs are here. We're enjoying them. You have any closing thoughts for the NBA playoffs?
No, I mean, I think the one thing that bums me out that like has persisted at least a little bit, and we're just starting to see it sprinkle in, and I hope it just doesn't continue. Is we had the Kawhi injury, we've now had the Paul injury,
Yep.
Giannis missed a game, Butler's missed a game, and Embiid's missed games. The only thing that's still frustrating, and there's probably just not a fix for it. It's just the reality of what it is it becomes an injury thing, which is why if you have guys like the Suns do, you're like, well, regardless of whether I think it's a perfect roster, if we hit the right injury luck, like we can win this thing. It's become like the NFL playoffs. We talked about it last year. I'll continue to
Yep.
say it. A big part of this is just an injury luck game. So may the odds be in the Suns' favor.
Yeah, they cannot afford any more injuries. In fact, they need to get some guys healthier. So
Yep.
we'll see what happens. That's pretty much all we got for you guys this week. Again, just to plug it, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast if you enjoyed our banter. If you're a huge Paul Wall fan or a good old boy Tyler Childers fan, go ahead and give us a little subscription there. Share the podcast with a friend. Share it with a family member. Leave a 5-star rating. Check us out on all social media platforms. Henny did a really good job with the draft coverage for the Twitter page. And does a really, really good job with the NBA coverage. Check out our TikTok, check out our Instagram, our Facebook. We're everywhere. And just stick with us. This is our 50th episode. I can't believe it. We are at the halfway point of a century. So I'm super excited about that. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate 50 by going through the NFL draft and NBA playoffs, two of our favorite things. So stick with us for another 50. Henny, you got any closing thoughts?
No, that's it, man. Congrats to you and thanks for all you've done to get us to 50, man. So congratulations. That's exciting for both of us on our part. So
Yep.
let's keep it going, brother.
Yes, sir. All right. With that, guys, we will be talking to you next week as the playoffs continue. If anything else happens in the NFL world or anything juicy in any other sport, we'll be bringing it to you. So with that, we'll talk to you later and stay safe this weekend. See ya.